From Mediaite, shut the F up. New York Times' Ezra Klein blasts people blaming Fox News for Trump winning in stunning rant. This one's so great. I've got so much for you here. First, I want to show you just the introduction of what Ezra Klein has to say. And for those who don't know, this is the guy who founded Vox.com. It's a leftist publication. He, along with Matthew Iglesias. Now, you may be wondering, who is Matthew Iglesias? He's the man who, during the Trump administration, said that progressives did a really good job on messaging because working class Americans thought their taxes went up when, in fact, Trump cut their taxes. I'll simplify that for you. He said, good job lying to the American people. They believed it. Here's Ezra Klein.
I come from outside Los Angeles. I lived in San Francisco until, 18 months ago, and I live in New York City. The thing that surprised me the thing that surprised me least about the election was the sharp red shift in these big cities. Because if you just talk to anybody who lives in them, they are furious. And this idea that oh no, the economy is actually good or crime is actually down, or this is all just Fox News, shut the fuck up with that. Talk to some people who live near you. The rage I just hear from people in New York, this is partially Greg Abbott busing huge amounts of migrants here. But that does mean, by the way, there are enough migrants that Greg Abbott could bus actual human bodies to New York City. And it was a big enough problem that New York City was not able to effectively deal with it, right? It does show that what was going on on the border was much worse. I think the Democrats were letting themselves.
So that's the point, right? When Don Lemon went to Atlantic City and said, who are you voting for? And the guy says, Donald Trump. And he goes, why? And he goes, the economy, man. And he says, the economy's actually good. And the guy just laughs. He just starts laughing like, are you kidding, dude? So funny story, guys. As I mentioned earlier, Allison was she was going to the grocery store to pick up stuff. I don't know what she's making, croissants, I think, or something else. She tried to make an apple crisp. It's all fantastic. It really is good. And she bought butter. And I looked at it. It was a 4-pack of butter sticks. And I said, how much was it? And she goes, it was $7. And I just started busting out laughing. I'm like, holy crap, the butter was $7. So take a look at this. We've got this op-ed from the Washington Post. Democrats need to reclaim reality from the right-wing disinformation machine. Beautiful. Beautiful, Jennifer Rubin. Let me read a little bit. She says, whether you believe that Americans embraced President-elect Donald Trump's misogynistic, racist, bullying persona because they misunderstood what he stood for, or because they liked what he stood for, or because they believed falsely the economy was in recession, or because they could not afford to buy their own home, or because of some combination of all these, we cannot ignore the success of right-wing media's disinformation network in shaping how millions of Americans view the country. Will Bunch of the Philadelphia Inquirer put it succinctly. The things that pundits have been talking about since Tuesday, an economy that hasn't worked for the working class at the time of Ronald Reagan, anxieties among white voters about potential end to white privilege and patriarchy, and a Democratic Party that's lost touch with the great American middle, all factored into this election. But nothing mattered more than this. Donald Trump was returned to power by the most badly informed electorate in modern American history. She goes on to say, in the right-wing media's world, the economy is in shambles, crime is surging, kids are being lured into sex reassignment surgery. In such an atmosphere, Democrats' positions and proposals become divorced from the public's perception of politics. Pause. Jennifer Rubin, you live in a paranoid delusional state. Ezra Klein walked outside and asked people in New York, and he's saying, shut the F up. People are pissed. People in New York City. AOC was shocked to find that her district shifted towards Trump by 11 points. So she asked her voters, how come some of you voted for me and for Trump? How could that be? Legit. People responded on X saying, I just want outsiders. I want anybody who's an outsider. So if this is what I have to work with, I'll take AOC, I'll take Trump. And I'm like, that's kind of weird. But I get it, I guess. Ezra Klein goes and talks to people and they're like, I'm dealing with crime. I talked to a guy from Chicago and he said the area that he's in, just north of downtown, there are 13-year-old gangbangers shooting up stores. And he's like, I've never seen it this bad. It's crazy. So whatever is going on with your metrics, crime is down actually and the economy's good. Fine, whatever, I guess. But when you go and talk to people who live in these places, they're like, it's miserable, it sucks, and I want change.
Aren't they big fans of polls too? Because for years, polls are saying America's going in the wrong direction. America's going in the wrong direction. Crime is up. Everyone, they can't afford it. Economy is a big thing on their factors. If they were big on polls and that lady, Jennifer Rubin, should have listened to the polls and would have known that that's why people voted for Trump. I have Democrat family who live in Pennsylvania, and they see immigration is a huge deal for them. Economy is a huge deal for them, and they voted for Trump. So
Black
just easy
voters in Chicago. There was a community gathering where they said, we are being replaced.
Yes, that one dude yelled at. He was so mad.
They were yelling it. And I'm like, Is the media going to come out and claim a bunch of racist great replacement theorists are screaming? Oh, I know it's black voters. So what's fascinating is right now, all you at home who are watching this show, I like it's plain and simple. I'm not going to tell you what I know to be true unless I know it to be true. What I can tell you right now is Ezra Klein of the New York Times said, I went and talked to people. They're pissed that they're experiencing crime and groceries are too expensive. And then Jennifer Rubin at WAPO says, that's actually fake news. Everything's fine. It's like, I liken it to that joke from Family Guy where Peter Griffin's in an elevator with one person. Peter Griffin farts, looks at the other guy and goes, it was you. I'm like, you can't lie to me, dude. I'm experiencing $7 butter. It's crazy to me that they're like, if the right-wing media sphere is lying about the economy. Butter was $7.
Do you remember?
My whipped cream was $7.
At the beginning of the Biden administration, when the actual line was that prices were going up because corporations were colluding to do it to turn the people against Joe Biden because he was in the pocket of all these corporations.
It's conspiracy theorists. It's just fascinating to me that if you read the Washington Post and the New York Times exclusively and you watch MSNBC, you are in a paranoid, delusional state.
Yeah, you can find like the most fringe right-wing theories and it's going to be something like, I think the elites are up to stuff that they probably shouldn't be up to. And it's like, okay, Uncle Rob. But then you just read like the Washington Post and it's completely misaligned with reality and it radicalizes people. You look at what it did with the second would-be Trump assassin. It's like these people have had their brains completely destroyed by the mainstream media.
I think one of my favorite is Alan Lichtman, because I talked about this earlier today. I did a segment. He's the professor with the keys to the White House.
Yes.
If you give a practical, not procedural assessment of the keys, all 13 are false. Mm-hmm. So for those that aren't familiar, this guy's got a prediction model going back to 81, and it's been right every time except 2000. He predicted Harris would win. He was wrong. So the way the keys work is there's 13 statements. If 6 or more are false, the challenging party wins, the incumbent party loses. And it's a bunch of questions like, is there a scandal? How's the economy? If you assess it based on practical emotions and sentiment of the people, Trump was predicted for a landslide victory, or I shouldn't say a landslide, but a sweep across the board. And if you live in MSNBC reality, you'd probably think Kamala Harris is going to win. Now, this guy is the perfect example. He was wrong. He puts out a video and says, the keys failed. My prediction was incorrect. I own up to it. I'm going to take some time off to assess and figure out how this happened. He came back.
That makes sense.
Goes on Cuomo's show in an unhinged rant. And I'm not kidding when I say unhinged. He's like, you got for the first time ever, a 300 billionaire. He was billions of misinformation. People, billions of views, misinformation. This has never happened before. It is not, my keys were not wrong. They didn't work because 160 years of history were overridden by misinformation. And it's like, my friend, calm down. 160 years of history was not overwritten. That's a ridiculous thing to claim. It's actually rather predictable. You just need to ask some people outside. But this is the reality. While they claim Alex Jones is a conspiracy theorist spewing hate and trapping you in a conspiracy world, it's actually them. You've got The View saying, don't go to your families for Thanksgiving. Huffington Post wrote an article saying, my husband and his family voted for Trump, so I'm skipping the holidays. That is the weird psycho cult saying, stay away from your friends and family. They're the ones giving you bad information, claiming it's good. Then they're claiming it's Alex Jones who's got you trapped in a cult.
Yeah, I think he even got it wrong in 2016, and then he had to explain it by saying, well, actually, my model predicts the popular vote, and since Hillary won, technically, I'm still right. So he's had to, explain himself walking into walls 2 or 3 times now. And like you said, I mean, if you read the keys, it's just an interesting set of heuristics, and yeah, you could go back and apply it to every election since the Civil War, which I think is what he's done. And this guy probably makes a very handsome salary to get wheeled out every 4 years and go on MSNBC and do his little segment about how the Democrats predicted to win, and I'm like a guru, and I have this forbidden knowledge and skeleton key, but he has no idea what he's talking about, because if anybody who is aligned with reality applies his model, it shows that Trump is going to win. There was even, I think on MSNBC, there was this female economist who has a model for predicting recession. It has something to do with the 3-month change in unemployment over the absolute rate or something. And every time that number has been a certain figure, we have been in a recession. And so they had her on because that number was showing we are in a recession. And she literally goes, well, actually, it's different now because we're waiting for for, the Biden policies to take effect, but we're getting close, so we have to go out and vote. And so it's like, okay, if you're that woman, are you really concerned about, integrity, or do you want to keep your nice MSNBC contributor job and just lie?
So real quick, Nate Silver, I mentioned this 3 times in the past show, but Nate Silver said, when I was putting out information, it gave me a sample of how Republicans and Democrats react to news and elections. Republicans are happy if you agree with them on some things. Democrats are mad if you don't agree with them on everything. What happens? An analyst shows up and they say, we're not in a recession. Tell us we're correct. And she goes, you're correct? And they're like, no recession.
Yeah, I think because, the people, it doesn't matter what the figures say. Their perception is going to inform how they choose to vote.
Well, look, good.
I didn't want you to stick the pit bulls on me if I cut you off or anything. People were experiencing, a majority of Americans were saying, I think we're in a recession. And that model said we're in a recession. And if you look at every election in the last 60 years or so, every time the country has had a presidential election while there was a recession, the incumbent party lost that. Because whether or not it's their fault, people are experiencing the economy and the grass is always a little bit greener. And so that was what it was looking like going into this. It's like, okay, Trump's going to win just based on that alone.
2 things. First of all, the fact that we're in a recession has been hidden by the administration. They've had to revise numbers multiple times, so they've been doing everything that they can to cook the numbers. Second of all, the truth of the matter is, wages always rise after the inflation happens. So the idea that, the inflation stopped, so everything's fine now. Prices don't go back to the way they were before the inflation came. Wages rise to meet the inflation. So the inflation is the leading indicator, and then the wage rise is the lagging indicator, and it takes time. So the fact that they managed to slow inflation down, that's a good thing that I think that maybe the administration can take credit for. But that doesn't mean that they weren't responsible for what caused the inflation in the first place. You can have a booming economy that doesn't have the major effects of inflation because you have increased the money supply, but you have to have that kind of pro-business, pro-growth policy. And the Democrats have never had that. The left has always had a policy, or at least in the past 20 years, has had policies that say we need to cut back, we need to shrink because we can't use too much energy. We have to worry about global warming. We have to worry about the environment. We have to worry about all of these things that are inconsequential to everyday Americans, and that have a massive impact on the economy when you regulate for these things.
I want to show some statements. The New York Times is getting a lot of attention right now because they've been tracking these 13 undecided voters, and they followed up with who they voted for and why. Democrats are losing their minds and refusing to accept it. So there's a few that, so one guy says he voted for Trump in 2020. He says, I voted for Kamala Harris. I'd been leaning that way after the debate, and January 6th was something I couldn't look past. Interesting. Okay, he voted for Trump in 2020, flipped for Kamala Harris, they say. This guy voted Biden in 2020. He says, I voted for Jill Stein. I came to that conclusion when Kamala said she wouldn't do anything different from Joe Biden. It was also the war in Gaza and the images I've seen. I couldn't get over it. Next, we have this guy, Pierce. I voted for Donald Trump. I decided after Kamala went on Call Her Daddy. I think Kamala Harris going on a sex podcast was probably a bad idea. Joe Rogan is a top issues podcast, but she wouldn't do that.
But it's so Brett.
That's right. Lillian, who voted for Trump in 2020, said that she voted for Trump and made the decision after they were having a meltdown about Madison Square Garden. Democrats ran an ad about abortion misinformation that made her upset. She said, you know what? I'm voting for Trump. Everybody hates him. They're lying about pregnancies. Let's just do it.
Nice.
Now the left is going, she voted for Trump in 2020. That doesn't mean anything. Well, here's this guy. This guy voted for Biden in 2020. I voted Trump. I made the decision after he appeared on Joe Rogan. He just seemed more normal than the other side. This guy voted for Joe Biden in 2020. Jasper. I voted for Trump. It was after realizing that many Democrats only preferred Harris because of her rhetoric and not because of her policy.
Yep.
This guy wrote in Josh Shapiro. That's whatever. This person who didn't vote said, I ended up voting for Kamala Harris. I did not want to vote for a convicted felon. So this is important. Donald Trump has not actually been convicted of any legitimate felonies. The charges that were brought in New York are misdemeanors that were beyond the statute of limitations. In order to upgrade those to felonies, you need an underlying crime. Donald Trump was never charged or accused of any other crimes. So that there's nothing there. It's insane. It's fabricated. Anyone who's looking at it will tell you this, but these people live in crackpot world. That's fine. She can vote for Harris. The next lady said, I can't believe it, but I did end up voting for Donald Trump. I made the decision when I saw J.D. Vance's interview with the New York Times. He is the future of the Republican Party. I'm more voting for Vance than I am for Trump. So there's a lot that are like this.
I like it.
This woman said she voted for Romney in 2020. I shocked myself and voted for Trump. No one tell my family. I was so impressed by J.D. Vance, the way he carried himself and how normally he appeared. I think I became radicalized on the men and women's sports issue. The ad that said Kamala represents they, them, Trump represents you was so compelling. While Trump is deranged, he represented normalcy somehow to me.
I mean, that's,
wow,
that's very
that one
fair. Yeah, that's good.
That one was it. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.